Thanks. First of all, Kim, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very interesting. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My question for you is, it's a two-part question. And the first one is, obviously in maybe rural and areas where there is a higher rate of illiteracy and non-numeracy, people may not see the value of mathematics, especially as, as the years go by. So obviously basic arithmetic, is something that's seen as useful, but as children get older and concepts get more abstract, older members in the community who have maybe never needed to use mathematics do perhaps see it as being something peripheral to the needs of the community. So my first question is, how do you believe we can make mathematics more relatable, not just to students, but to communities as a whole? And then from there on, how do you feel about, I know in South Africa, it is one way that in the medical field, they are trying to ensure that there are quality medical professionals everywhere, is encouraging people who come from rural and lower economic areas to study in that field with the hopes that they will return to where they live in order to take up, that profession. So where you are, is something like that in place?
I'll try and remember the two bits of that question. So, in fact, I've already forgotten the first one, but I'll start with the second one. You can remind me of the first one. So that idea of, I've heard it called grow your own, sort of in terms of teachers. Like if you encourage people from a local community to maybe go away and study to become a teacher, then they are more likely to come back to their local community. And there is some truth in that. What I have found in my research, though, that even when that happens, some of those teachers are not necessarily going to have different beliefs from some of those unhelpful ones that I talked about in the presentation. And my hypothesis is that the reason for that could be that when you have an area where there are very low rates of university study and qualification, if someone goes away to university to become a teacher, they are often quite an exceptional person from their local town. Not many people do that. And they have probably spent a good deal of their school life being told that they are clever and exceptional and whatever in various ways. And off they go to university, and then they come back. And they come back with a belief about themselves that they've formed through their childhood, that they are a bit exceptional and not quite like most of the people in that community. And they still have that belief. And, I've met teachers who fit that sort of model, who actually believe, because of their own experience, that university education is for the exceptional children in this town only, and not for so many of them. And so they don't necessarily have higher expectations. So it doesn't necessarily, you actually can get teachers there, but you don't necessarily get teachers with high expectations of those children, which is, I guess having a teacher there at all is a step forward, but it's not the full answer. And the first part of your question...
Yeah, the first part of my question was relating to making maths relatable
yes.
Across the generations, obviously to encourage further mathematics study.
Yeah, thank you. So I think, in all the times I've talked to parents in rural communities, I am yet to meet, or in any community actually, I am yet to meet a parent who doesn't want the absolute best for their child. So I think that's a given. And so I think the key to get parents on board is perhaps not simply, but to help them to understand that all the doors that mathematics can open for their child, all the opportunities that it affords, how important it is for employment. And in my experience, the majority of parents kind of understand that. They often are quite negative about maths themselves from their own experience of studying at school, but they do know it's important. And I know you know, a lot of the TIMS data from certainly Australia's TIMS data shows that students will say they'll agree quite strongly that maths is important, but it's almost like it's important for somebody else. It's important, but I don't want to study it. So I don't think it's too hard to convince people that maths is important. In terms of the relevance thing, I think there's some work to do with helping teachers to understand the relevance of mathematics to the jobs in the local community. For example, just a fortnight ago when I was out in the country town, I interviewed a teacher out there, and I was talking to her about the industries in the local area, and she knew that the main industries were mining and agriculture. And I asked her what she thought the students needed to know to get jobs in those industries. And she talked mainly about agriculture, and she was talking about things, they need to know about soil and about how to look after animals and how to grow crops and whatever. But there was no awareness evident in her responses of just how technological farming has become. There are a whole lot of computer systems on, weather monitoring and soil monitoring and, really sophisticated drone technology even. And it's a highly mathematical and scientific endeavour now in a lot of modern farming. And so I think helping teachers to understand some of those things better would be useful. The other comment I'd make about that, and this is really from my own experience of teaching maths to children in rural areas. I had lots of years of kids saying, what we hear they say all the time, "Oh, when will I ever use this? Why do I have to do this algebra or whatever?" And I think if we're maths teachers, we might all have heard that. And I tried for years to kind of answer that and say, "Oh, but you need it for this, it's really important in this or that job or whatever." And was never terribly happy with the answers. And it occurred to me that I don't think my colleagues who were teaching art or English got asked that question nearly as often, even though most children will never have to analyse the plot of a novel or paint a portrait in their job. But they still don't ask those questions. And so I started answering that question when students asked me in maths classes with not answering it really. I would just say, "Where did I lose you?" Because I figured out eventually that in most cases that question is really a cry for help about how meaningless this maths is. I just don't understand it and I'm feeling lost. And it's socially acceptable in a maths class in front of all your peers to say that this is useless and irrelevant and I'm not going to use it, because everybody says that, rather than to say, "I'm lost, I don't understand," with the implication I might be dumb. So I think for a lot of students, it's really, really a protest about things being meaningless. And I think it was important that I said, "Where did I lose you?" rather than "Where did you get lost?" Because that was subtly, but importantly, I think, putting the problem back in my court rather than it's your problem. It was, I have lost you. So there's something wrong with my teaching potentially. So there's a lot to that issue, I think, but that's just a few thoughts.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.